As Africa continues to assert its place in the global economic arena, 2025 marks a significant year in the continent's growth trajectory. Despite ongoing global challenges, several African nations have demonstrated resilience and progress, driven by a mix of natural resources, technological innovation, infrastructural development, and expanding consumer markets. The top 10 strongest economies in Africa showcase a dynamic blend of established powerhouses and fast-emerging markets, each playing a pivotal role in shaping the continent's economic future. In this video, we shall be using the data obtained from the International Monetary Fund (IMF) and the World Bank to deduce the top 10 strongest economies in Africa 2025. But before we start, make sure to give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, so you don't miss out on future educative and informative videos regarding the interesting continent of Africa. With that out of the way, let's begin. 10. Ghana. GDP, $88 billion. Located in West Africa, Ghana has the 10th strongest economy in Africa. With a GDP of $88 billion and purchasing power parity of $226 billion in the previous year. The country was the first in sub-Saharan Africa to be liberated from colonial rule and the first to achieve the goal of having extreme poverty. Ghana's economic resource base includes the manufacturing and exportation of digital technology goods, the construction and exportation of automobiles and ships, and the exportation of diverse and rich resources such as hydrocarbons and industrial materials. As a result, Ghana now has one of the highest GDP per capita rates in West Africa. Because of its overall favorable business environment, the country has attracted foreign investment and has experienced economic growth in the last decade. Ghana is regarded as one of the strongest economies in Africa due to its rich natural resources, economic reforms, and growing regional influence. As Africa's top gold producer and one of the world's leading cocoa exporters, Ghana benefits from strong export revenues that support its foreign reserves and economic stability. The country has also made significant strides in oil and gas production, infrastructure development, and regulatory reforms aimed at attracting investment. With steady GDP growth and projected around 4.8% and ongoing improvements in inflation control and fiscal management, Ghana continues to position itself as a key economic player and gateway to West Africa. 9. Ivory Coast, GDP, $93 billion. In 2025, Ivory Coast stands out as one of Africa's strongest economies due to its blend of consistent growth, macroeconomic stability, and strategic diversification. The country has maintained robust real GDP growth of around 7% annually since 2024, significantly higher than regional averages. As the world's top cocoa producer, Ivory Coast generates substantial export revenue, while agricultural processing including cashews and rubber has expanded rapidly, boosting value-added output. Newly discovered offshore oil and gas reserves and expanding gold mining activities are transforming the extractive sector into a major growth driver, with energy production set to rise sharply by 2027. Strategic infrastructure investments, improved business reforms, and sober fiscal management have reinforced investor confidence. Altogether, Ivory Coast's sustainable policies, diversified economy, and regional role make it a cornerstone of West Africa's economic dynamism. 8. Angola. GDP, $113 billion. Angola has one of the largest reserves of raw materials in Africa, and its economy is based on oil, with large reserves of natural gas and oil accounting for more than one-third of the country's GDP. Crude oil production and export contribute significantly to foreign exchange. In fact, crude oil sales account for 90% of the country's export revenue. Diamonds and cargo ships are two other notable exports. Angola has the 8th strongest economy in Africa with a GDP of more than $105 billion and purchasing power parity of $262 billion, and its economy was one of the fastest growing in the world during the first decade of the 21st century, with annual average GDP growth of 11% from 2001 to 2011. Angola is still growing faster than the rest of the world due to high international oil prices and rising oil production. Agriculture is also expected to become an important economic sector in the future. Angola's major exports are refined petroleum products, crude oil, coffee, diamonds, sisal, fish and fish products, timber, and cotton. Despite abundant oil and gas resources, diamonds, hydroelectric potential, and fertile agricultural land, Angola remains impoverished, with subsistence agriculture employing 1/3 of the population. 7. Ethiopia. GDP, $117 billion. Ethiopia, the only African country to have never been colonized by European countries, is a landlocked country located in the Horn of Africa and divided by the Great Rift Valley. Ethiopia has the sixth strongest economy in Africa with a GDP of $117 billion and a purchasing power parity of $379 billion. This ancient country is famous for being the origin of the coffee bean, with archaeological findings dating back over 3 million years. Agriculture, construction, manufacturing, tourism, food processing, resources and energy are the major contributors to the country's strong economy. Agriculture is the most important resource in the region, accounting for more than 40% of GDP, 60% of exports, and more than 80% of total employment. Telecommunications, financial and insurance services, air and land transportation services, and retail, on the other hand, are considered strategic sectors and are expected to remain under state control for the foreseeable future. Almost half of Ethiopians are under the age of 18. Despite significant increases in primary and secondary school enrollment, job creation has not kept pace with the increased output from educational institutions. Since 2008, Ethiopia's economic growth has averaged 9.9% year-on-year. This consistent annual growth, which few African countries have achieved, has begun to attract foreign investment. In 2018, the government launched an ambitious economic reform to further open up the economy and drive transformation. By 2015, the country's poverty rate had dropped by 31% and it aims to be a middle-income economy by 2025. High consumer inflation, socio-political instability, and an underdeveloped private sector, on the other hand, are issues to keep an eye on. 6. Kenya. GDP, $118 billion. Kenya is a country located in East Africa, and it's known for its vast landscapes and wildlife. Kenya has the seventh strongest economy in Africa, with a GDP of more than $118 billion and a purchasing power parity of $339 billion. Thanks to its stable living conditions, established coffee and tea sectors, and rapidly growing agricultural sector, Kenya's economy is market-based, with a few state-owned enterprises. It is also an emerging market and a country with a higher level of industrialization than its East African counterparts. Kenya is a middle-income country with ambitions to become a newly industrialized nation by 2030. Agriculture, forestry, fishing, mining, manufacturing, energy, tourism, and financial services are among the major industries in the country. Kenya is the wealthiest country in Southeast and Central Africa. For centuries, its coastline has been home to a number of strategic ports for Asian and Arabian traders, becoming a regional trade hub. Kenya's economy, unlike many other countries on this list, is not based on the oil industry, but it is experiencing diverse positive growth. A large pool of highly educated professional workers support these advancements. IT literacy and innovation are also high, particularly among young Kenyans. The industrial sector accounts for nearly half of the GDP. The agricultural sector accounts for 35% of the GDP, with coffee, tea, and maize being the main products. Tourism, financial services, and technology all experienced rapid growth, and petroleum accounts for a sizable portion of the country's foreign exchange. 5. Morocco. GDP, $160 billion. Morocco's economy is considered relatively liberal, governed by the law of supply and demand, and its economy ranks 5th on the list of Africa's strongest economies, with a GDP of $160 billion and purchasing power parity of $384 billion. Morocco has emerged as a major player in African economic affairs. This North African country's economy is versatile and stable, with growth in a variety of industries over the last decade. As of 2017, Morocco had the Arab world's second-largest non-oil GDP, trailing only Egypt. Mining and manufacturing drives the Moroccan economy. Industry, agriculture, phosphate minerals, and tourism are the mainstays of the Moroccan economy. Industry accounts for 30% of Moroccan GDP, agriculture for 15%, and services account for 55%. Fish and seafood sales are also significant. This is supplemented by a growing tourism sector, with locals welcoming of tourists and the government emphasizing on attracting visitors to the country's known attractions. Morocco has also reaped significant benefits from its diverse exports, which include, but are not limited to, electrical equipment, vehicles, and vehicle parts. Furthermore, the telecom and textile industries contribute significantly to the economy. 4. Nigeria. GDP, $253 billion. Nigeria, which as of 2023 held the position of the largest economy in Africa, experienced a significant shift, dropping to the fourth position, with a GDP of $252.74 billion due to some economic crippling policies implemented almost immediately after their 2023 election. With a population of over 200 million people, this West African country is vital to the African economy. The economy of Nigeria is a middle-income, mixed economy and emerging market. With expanding manufacturing, financial, service, communications, technology, and entertainment sectors. It is ranked the 31st largest economy in the world in terms of nominal GDP, the largest in Africa, and the 27th largest in terms of purchasing power parity. Nigeria's large population has helped propel the country to the position of the largest consumer retailer in Africa. The country's digitally savvy residents have also contributed to the country's rapidly growing tech sector. According to the World Bank, Nigeria's GDP grew at one of the fastest rates in Africa between 2000 and 2014. Due to political insecurity, socio-economic factors, and oil and production shocks, this has slowed to 2% in recent years. Finance, transportation, infrastructure, tourism, and an abundance of crude oil drive the country's strong economy. According to OPEC, Nigeria exports about 1.6 million barrels of crude oil per day, making it the largest crude oil exporter in Africa. Despite accounting for 2/3 of state revenue, oil only accounts for about 9% of the GDP. Nigeria also has an abundance of raw materials and natural resources. In addition to petroleum, which contributes to the region's wealth, the country also has huge deposits of coal, limestone, zinc, lead, tin, natural gas, niobium, and iron ore. There is also enough fertile land for agriculture, which accounts for more than 20% of the GDP. 3. Algeria. GDP, $266 billion. Algeria, a country in North Africa, is the continent's largest country by land area and is one of the wealthiest countries in Africa. With a significant strong economy and available infrastructure, as well as a GDP of more than $260 billion and purchasing power parity of $600 billion. The country has made the notable achievement of reducing poverty by 20% in the last 20 years. This developing Saharan country has an abundance of crude oil reserves, and the economy is heavily reliant on it. So much so, that hydrocarbons account for nearly 70% of the country's income. More crude oil discovery in recent years have boosted this rapidly growing industrial country. Agriculture, industrial works, commercial services, and construction are some of the other sectors that contribute to the Algerian economy. The country is also one of the continent's largest suppliers of ammonia. It is worth noting, however, that the recent depression and volatility in oil prices have resulted in a decrease in the country's currency reserves. Continued implementation of government structural reform programs, greater openness to the private sector, increased competitiveness, and increased investment in human capital are all critical to the Algerian economy's flourishing and resilience. 2. Egypt. GDP, $347 billion. For many years, this ancient land from North Africa held the title of Africa's wealthiest country. However, the economy suffered greatly and foreign exchange reserves plummeted following the 2011 Arab uprising. Egypt is now the second richest country in Africa, with a recent GDP of more than $347 billion and purchasing power parity $1.8 trillion. Since the early 2000s, the rapid pace of structural reforms including fiscal and monetary policies, taxation, privatization, and new business legislation has aided Egypt's transition to a more market-oriented economy and encouraged increased foreign investment. Reforms and policies have also boosted macroeconomic annual growth rates. Over the last decade, economic activity has improved and stabilized, resulting in positive economic growth. The government recently completed an economic reform program with the IMF to reform and strengthen the country. The Egyptian economy is driven by petroleum and natural gas exports, tourism, wholesale and retail trade, construction, and real estate. In recent years, the state's economy has shifted away from raw materials export, with service-based employment accounting for more than half of the GDP. However, Egypt may face socio-economic issues as a result of large percentage of the population living below the poverty line, unemployment, a weakened healthcare system, and a global slowdown. 1. South Africa. GDP, $422 billion. South Africa is the most industrialized, technologically advanced, and the most diverse country on the entire African continent. With a highly developed economy and advanced infrastructure, South Africa has a total GDP of $422 billion, and a purchasing power parity of $994 billion. The country is also regarded as one of the world's fastest developing. South Africa is one of only 8 African countries with an upper-middle income economy. South Africa, also known as the Rainbow Nation, is one of the few countries on this list that does not rely on a single source of revenue. Mining, manufacturing, financial services, and tourism are all important industries in the country. The country is also blessed with a lot of natural resources and raw materials exports such as gold, diamonds, platinum, coal, and iron ore. The country is a significant exporter of these commodities, particularly gold and platinum. South Africa is well known around the world as a major tourist destination and places a high value on tourism as a source of revenue. However, political and global unrest have hampered its ability to realize its full potential. After experiencing 4 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth rates, the country entered a recession, and development has slowed. So, there you have it, explorers. The top 10 strongest economies in Africa 2025. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, so you don't miss any of our future uploads regarding the interesting continent of Africa. Thanks for watching this one. Catch you all in the next.